In the story of our relationship with God, it's always a two-way street. As we go through this Advent season, we very appropriately focus on God's pursuit of us, and that story is beautiful. It details how from the beginning of time, God was planning on slowly revealing himself for the intended purpose of building a relationship with us, all culminating in the coming of his Son, our Lord Jesus Christ. But in any good relationship, there has to be a response. And that response then has to come from us. We don't build any relationships if one person is always constantly displaying the effort and pursues the other, but that effort then isn't reciprocated. So if we want to build our relationship with God, we have to put in effort. But God the Father isn't someone who you can cook a meal for and sit down and do nice things for like that. He's a spiritual being. He has an intellect and a will. So if we want to put in the effort in our relationship with God, we have to do three things. We have to come to know him better. We have to seek to do his will. And as a result, grow in our love of him. But that's not always easy. We don't know everything. And with all the doubts that are swirling around in the world, some of them are bound to creep into our hearts from time to time. And something that I've noticed is that people tend to beat themselves up a lot if they happen to have doubts about different aspects of the faith. And maybe if you're struggling with any doubts here today, look no further than the gospel for some consolation. St. John the Baptist even struggled with doubts. John wanted confirmation. He wanted to be sure that before he let himself be martyred, that this man was the Messiah that he thought he was. Even St. John the Baptist, the one who Jesus himself praised as being the greatest man born of woman, struggled with doubts from time to time. And we learn from that it's okay to wrestle with the big questions of life, as long as we follow John's example, though, and go to Jesus seeking the answer. Because John then gives us what we need. Jesus is the one who supplies us with the information, the peace, the love, the wisdom that we need. He doesn't always do it in the clearest way, maybe, that we would prefer or that we would even like, but he gives us enough to calm our anxieties, firm up our faith, which is what ultimately is what's going to bring us to salvation. Jesus, for John, points to the messianic prophecies from Isaiah that help ease the doubt in John's heart, allows him the peace to undergo his eventual martyrdom in the sure and certain hope of the eternal reward ahead of him. That is why we rejoice on this Gaudete Sunday, because our Lord does not leave us in darkness. But as the second reading tells us, we may have to be patient for a time. We await with patience the coming of the Lord, who brings with him the wisdom and understanding, the wisdom that formed the world, the wisdom that has guided the church for 2,000 years, that has nurtured the faith of every Catholic who has come before us. And all that is required is the humility to submit to God, turning to him when we need help, and the patience to await the coming of the Lord, who brings with him that wisdom that is the light in the darkness, the joy and peace that dispels the fear and mourning. And so we do rejoice this Gaudete Sunday, the third Sunday of Advent, because the Lord's coming is getting closer and closer. We prepare our hearts to receive him today and pray for that patience that's necessary to faithfully await his coming, both now at Christmas and at the end of time for his glorious second coming.